Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. Glad you could join us for this month's, the November 2022, What's Happening in Model Railroading. And joining me tonight is the owner of Otter Valley Railroad, Lorne James. Lorne, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ray. Good evening.
Good evening, and quite an evening it is. We're recording on a Saturday night. We'll be releasing this out on Tuesday, so just in a couple days. And right now I'm listening to the rain pelt the back window here because the remnants of Nicole are rolling through. So hopefully we'll stay up and the technical problems won't come, but the wind and rain is going on outside. But we're able to sit here and have a great conversation about Otter Valley Railroad and some of the exciting things you got going on up there.
Sounds great.
Yeah, well, let's get right into it. So I know I'm familiar with Otter Valley Railroad, but for those folks that aren't, tell us a little bit about Otter Valley and in the little bit of background story of your shop.
So Otter Valley Railroad is a mom and pop family-owned business. It's been owned by myself and my parents previously with myself since 2003. In 2017, my mom unfortunately passed away, and in 2019, my dad retired. And I'm now the subsequent owner, and my wife, along with my daughter Isabel, is the next generation of Otter Valley. So we're a mom and pop shop based in Southern Ontario, so between Detroit and Buffalo on Lake Erie. We're located in Tillsonburg, Ontario. Our shop is just under 4,000 square foot. We predominantly do HONN, and people will notice in the past to carry a large variety of inventory, but also do special and unique runs of Canadian product with companies like Atlas, Rapido, Bowser, Walters, and now we are starting to make our own product under the OVR Trains brand.
You got a lot of exciting stuff going on there for sure. And family owned is really a cool aspect of this. What got your family into the model railroad business?
So the model railroading bug hit our family, I would say, the summer of 91, 92. I grew up in a little town called Calton, which is basically a corner post stop in the middle of Southern Ontario. I was a fifth generation on our farm, and we played for the baseball team in a small village up the road called Richmond, and our practice facility was at a place called Corinth. And beside the Corinth practice ball diamond was the CN Cayuga subdivision, which hosted 3 to 4 Norfolk and Southern trains a day. And what those trains predominantly did was they hauled automotive parts and finished automobiles from the St. Thomas Ford Assembly Plant in Ontario to Buffalo Market and stamping back from Buffalo to St. Thomas. So that was the first bug. And my father, being a Ford St. Thomas Assembly Plant millwright and safety inspector, that was the other tidbit was, product that's hauling dad's parts to the plant. Yeah. So by playing baseball and seeing these big black Norfolk and Southern units with the big horse, yep, I started to fall in love with the big SD60s and the Dash 9s and the Dash 8s of NS. And that following Christmas, I asked for a train set and went from a small tabletop layout to we had a room in the basement. And then I started to get more interested in business and running a business when I was 15, 16. On the farm, we had a Christmas tree operation. We did a bunch of different stuff on the farm. I had about 4 or 5 acres of produce that I'd have a produce stand in the summer on top of working. And I asked my parents in the spring of 2003 about getting a retail business license to start selling model trains to friends and customers in our area. And it just expanded from an idea of a little mail order business to helping local guys to one of the biggest shops in Canada.
Well, that's quite amazing. So you're kind of guy that likes to sell stuff to people. You just that passion of connecting people with product.
Well, it's funny, like growing up on our family farm, being a fifth generation, my grandfather was known for in the summer growing tobacco, in the winter handling tobacco trade throughout Canada and internationally. So he was one of the ones that handled all the buyers for De Maurier and Players and Benson Hedges and all those companies. But in the winter, we were also known within a 40 to 50 kilometer radius of the Jameses that sell Christmas trees. We had 100 acres of Christmas trees on our farm that we would sell high-end Christmas trees, and Johnny, the ones that Charlie Brown would buy for $8, and that was notorious. So, I grew up 6, 7, 8, going back with my granddad and my dad, cutting Christmas trees and bringing them up and selling them or filling up tractor beds for people in St. Thomas or London for resale. And it went from that to having a produce stand to wanting to do retail. And then, I went into university and did my undergrad in business and accounting, did my post-education as a CPA, and then got trained as a CPA, did that for a number of years. And then I came back to the business on top of my career and just wanted to, enjoy the hobby else at the same time, grow a family business. And we got one of the proudest mom and pop shops around, and it makes me happy every day that, we can say that we're a mom and pop shop from the ground up.
Oh, there's definitely something to be very proud of there. When you were in your teens, what do you remember as being one of your first product lines? What are some of the first things that you were selling?
So some of the first things we ever were selling was Cato locomotives. One of our first ever suppliers was the first ever Cato wholesaler in North America. So me being adventurous and not having any fear, I would just find out the wholesalers, either call up or send a fax and say, "Hey, can I have a dealer application?"
Yeah, that's really wild.
From there.
Yeah, to stick your head out there, and get to find out who these distributors are, and that's and they went with you, and yep. Good thing they did. I mean, it worked out well for you, and obviously growing the business, and now they're associated with one of the premier hobby shops in Canada. So all grown from just a little bit of a dream as a teenager.
Literally, it grew from the first box of all custom orders to the last pickup, which was 18 skids of product. Amazing.
So, well, let's talk about what I guess I wrote a question down. I'm gonna, that's probably a good idea to ask it, huh? What is your favorite part of being a hobby shop owner?
Seeing what each modeler's involved in the aspects of the hobby. So, obviously, I love shooting the breeze with customers, whether it's in person in the shop on a Saturday, whether it's an after hours phone call and catching up, talking trains, talking modeling. Sometimes we just talk life. Definitely, I've went through a lot of traumatic things, and a lot of customers know that when you lose a parent and a business partner, some of your customers become very close to you, and it feels like an extension of family. But really just talking trains, talking life. A lot of customers have seen me grow up, and a lot of customers now are seeing my daughter Isabel grow up. So I think that point of view and love of the hobby. I mean, I surrounded myself with people in the shop. So the gents that work for me, they're all modelers, and all the ladies that work for me have either an art background or arts and crafts background. And one of my girls, she's a fine artist. The other two are into quilting and other stuff. So transferable skills of other hobbies can really come into the forefront when it comes into model trains, because there's always a different skill set in this hobby that can move to another hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our hobby is full of just a multitude of different skills anyway. So it just so many different ways to fit into the model railroading hobby, whether you're into carpentry or arts, like the painting or electrical, or just a multitude of different things that a person can fit into it. And when you talk about your staff, there's no exception there.
And the other thing is, I love the prototype. I've always loved the prototype, Ray. Like when I told you the story of seeing my first ever Norfolk and Southern. So the locomotives made that train cool, but you know what made that train cool? It was one of the last trains in North America that still had a caboose. And on the caboose, it said Canada only operations.
Oh, that's great.
And that was like another one of those things. So I've always tried to incorporate prototypical product in my shop. And I'm also modeling a prototypical basis on something that I used to do all the time with my dad, where we go camping and we would camp beside the right of way and watch trains come in during the middle of the night.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. So your dad was big into it too. That definitely helps.
He got into it because I got into it.
Yeah, that's really cool. You mentioned your mom had passed, but what was her? Did she have a real big passion for the railroad, or was she just excited about the business and supporting it? I mean, what was her?
She was excited about supporting me. She was more excited about just the lifelong friendships and relationships he had with a lot of customers. She could resonate with a lot of customers. Like when you're in a demographic where your customer base is sometimes 60 plus, it's easy to talk about non-train stuff,
right?
Especially if you're going through different heartache or ups and downs or different stuff like that. I mean, my mom fought cancer for 5 years. Unfortunately, cancer is something that does impact our hobby.
Sure.
Or it impacts loved ones in our hobby. So, I mean, she had lots of good conversations, and she would love to go out to shows or see people in the shop that, connect with and sit and have coffee or tea with and just, shoot the breeze.
It seems like your mom brought what really is the at least for me, when I go into a model railroad shop, is the experience, right? You can go and buy in a multitude of places, but what kind of experience do you get when you're walking in the door, and that connection and, feeling that you're wanted there, that the shop owner or the staff want to help you. They want to get to know you. They want to hear about your layout and whatnot. That's just so important. And then they get to know about your life and so much more. It's quite amazing when you get a hobby shop that gets that and is able to do it day in and day out.
One of the pride and goals that my mom had was making you feel welcome, but before most, making you feel that you're valued before you even purchase. So she would, if she had a good relationship with you or had a previous conversation, she would ask how your spouse or your children were, how your day was. If she thought that you were having a down day, she'd try to cheer you up. Even if she was having a day where she was struggling, physically or health-wise, she would make it her goal to put you ahead of her and make you feel appreciated regardless of how much you spent or how little you spent, or if you spent nothing for the day. One of my big things is everyone who walks in our shop, they should be immediately welcomed. How are you today? Is there anything we can help you with? If you don't see anything, please let us know. And another rule I always have a lot of customers is there's no stupid question.
Right.
Not asking a question is a stupid thought.
Yeah.
There's never a dumb question in the hobby, and a customer or a modder should never feel prejudiced for asking a question because of how they think it'll be received.
That's so important.
And that was something I learned from a young age. Doesn't matter where your skill set are, every question's valid.
Well, it certainly seems like your mother and father both gave you a great gift and some great foundation. And you're absolutely right. And I think that a lot of model shop owners need to understand their role in the hobby. They're really they're the welcoming committee to a lot of people to the hobby. And that experience at the hobby shop, like you said, there is no stupid question. When you feel like that, when you can say, hey, I really don't understand. What's the difference between DC and DCC? Very baseline question, but for somebody that doesn't know or isn't in the lingo and just getting into the hobby, they need to have that comfort level. And who better than the supplier to their hobby?
And sometimes I fall prey to this. It happened to me about 2 weeks ago where my store manager, Anita, came up to me and she goes, you need to talk slower. You need to talk simpler. You're talking over this person by 30 miles a minute. They're still green.
Right.
They don't understand that you've got 25 or 30 years of experience. So sometimes I struggle to break it down to just the bare bone basics. So I have to sometimes disseminate it out and simplify it to some of my staff so they can get that person that's on, say, novice up to intermediate, because there's some topics that I'm going to put them over their head.
Oh, cool.
Sometimes the customers come back and say, you know what, Lorne was, too quick or too abrasive, and the girls are like, he's not. He's just, sometimes that's just the way he talks. That he's not trying to insult you. He talks more content than you can handle at one moment.
Right. Well, kudos to them for even, for as a team. That's a great team you got there. To be able to go to the owner and say, hey, listen, and be able to give you feedback like that, that shows that you've really built a great team there, because they're able to go to the leader and still be able to give constructive criticism and feedback that helps move the whole company forward. And that's fantastic that you've built that kind of culture.
Yeah, we have what's called the frying pan rule. So my mother had instilled to my wife that anytime that Lorne acts out of line, you hit him with a frying pan.
Oh boy.
Because my great aunt had told her that's how you hit my father. Just hit him with a frying pan until he smartens up. So my wife told the girls, anytime that Lorne's out of line, just get the paddle out or let me know and I'll hit him with the frying pan. Get him back in line.
Well, that's one way to do it. Hopefully you're in line pretty good, because boy, that could be pretty painful. So, one thing I did notice, and I've been perusing around the Otter Valley Railroad website. You got a great website with a lot of products on it, and one thing I really note about your hobby shop is, I used to travel quite a bit as an outside sales rep. I was traveling all of New England and half of New York State and Long Island, and overnights I would kill some time by looking for the local hobby shop. And I always had this assumption or maybe hope that by walking into a local hobby shop, you would find the local roads at the local hobby shop. And I'll tell you, quite often that wasn't the case. You'd walk in there and you'd basically see the same Class 1 railroads that you saw, 50 miles to the north, south, east, or west. But I think your shop's a little different on that. I think you might be the shop I've been looking for.
Generally, my first rule is a local road should be in the shelf if it's made mainstream. And if it's not made mainstream, then I assess whether I can work at the manufacturer to do a special run. So, you'll see all the big Canadian Class 1s and the U.S. Class 1s in our shop, but you'll sometimes also see some of the smaller Canadian short lines and U.S. short lines. But sometimes you'll see labels like off road names off kilter, like Ontario Southland, like Trillium Railway, like Cape Breton in central Nova Scotia, or, Goddard to Exeter, part of the Genesee, Wyoming branch. Or if I'm really feeling spry, I'll commit to doing a special unique paint scheme like I've done before with Rapido or with Atlas or with Bowser. I'm really open to anything. I've made it well aware to the customer base that if there's a model they're interested, let's consider it. And I've also looked at, whenever a manufacturer's brought something out, if there's a fit for a smaller run of custom run stuff for smaller short lines, because it might not fit with the manufacturer at X pieces, but it might fit with the hobby shop like Otter Valley at Y pieces. So I've always tried to make those decisions, and I've done that before in the past, and I've had a pretty good relationship with most of the manufacturers to find that fit where we both sides are beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the coverage that you have here is just outstanding. And, I'm looking at your website. It's ovrtrains.com. We'll put a link in the show notes, and we'll also put that on the Facebook posting for the show so that folks can get to this and check out your offerings. So you and I started to connect right around the time I put a pre-order in, and you've got some exciting things going on with the up at Otter Valley Railroad, not necessarily in the retail side, but on sort of the manufacturing side. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you got going on there?
So right after my dad retired in October of 2019, one of my longtime friends and customers, Andrew Duns, he was helping me relocate the shop, and him and I for a year or two had thought about where does the evolution of Otter Valley go. Does it go vertically? Does it go with a franchise? And he's like, what's your thoughts? I'm like, I'd love to make my own models. So out of a handful of conversations, a couple rail fanning trips that we had, a couple times with him and I meeting each other in the side of a ditch watching, certain cars going by, it just spawned into an idea of, okay, well, I've got a few connections in China. I'm willing to do some legwork. And he just went from designing it to 3D printing it to doing a test run, which we did a test run in 2020. We did our first annual Otter Valley Railroad manufacturers pop-up event. And so we had different manufacturers come that day, and then we tested our 3D samples. And then we just kind of rolled it through. People started saying, hey, you know what? If you're going to make this product, I'm on board. And then I really started to ranch it up, making my manufacturing connections overseas. And then, we decided, okay, here we got final designs. We're happy with this, all the field measurements, paint. We made the tooling investment, and then we came out with our first samples in September of 22. And currently today, all our entire first run of National Steel 6400 high side gondola hoppers are all in production. So that includes everything in our first production run, which is 132 SKUs, which is a huge offering for the first time ever.
For sure.
And we're going to have them available in the market sometime middle of February. And we're going to be at Springfield with lots of surprises and lots of uniqueness for all the modelers that are eagerly waiting the debut of this, as well at the same time, so they can meet the OVR Trains team. And we have space there for the show, and we will have our team, both myself, Andrew, my partner, who is the tooler and designer, as well as some of our longtime OVR staff are going to be with us. So you can put a face to the person, and you can get that one-to-one experience and, discover our product, discover our new brand. At the same time, also make suggestions for future products. So we are, as you say, we're open for business and open for considerations. And we really want to work with the modelers, the clubs. But we didn't just launch one model, Ray. We then rolled into two other models that same day.
Amazing. So what else you got on the plate here?
Well, so spawning from out of the 6400 National Steel one, we decided to do the 6000 National Steel one. And that one is only used in scrap service. And the reason why is some of the clients that were using the 6400 were being too abrasive with how they were putting material in there, and they were structurally breaking some of the cars internally. So National Steel came out with the smaller 6,000 and 4,000 when it came to steel scrap and aluminum scrap, and they had pushed the client base away from the 6400s. Now, there is still some clients that will order 6400s for scrap, but it comes with conditions and weighting ratings, so they changed that out. So we're doing the 6,000, and the reason why we did the 6,000 is we designed the tooling on the 6400 that it's a hybrid. So we're doing 6 versions off the bat with the 6400, and we have the ability to tool 4 more versions for a very economical rate, and we're doing the 6,000. So that spawned the next car, and then Andrew says to me, what else you thinking? Well, if we're going to go for the whole home run, let's do the pipe car too. And he was like, I don't know. I'm like, the pipe car's on me. It's going to be a winner or it's going to be a failure. But I've shared with you some of our first tooling samples tonight, and
yeah, they're outstanding.
A pipe car on HO scale. Can you come up to a time when there was a car that only handled pipe?
Not that I can think of, but I'm
with reinforced ends and special ribbing and all the caging, and it's going to have the strap floors, and I actually think it's going to be a very successful model. It's going to be part of our marketing strategy to inform and educate the modelers that the car travels the entire CN system, and it travels a good portion of the U.S. system. I got pictures of it in California, Texas, Arkansas, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, parts of Nebraska. So the cars get around. They obviously don't get around in 20, 30 car cuts like they do in Canada and Ontario, Alberta, because they're going to specialized clients. But you can see 2, 3, 4 car cuts throughout the United States by all the different class ones. So that's a unique car. And the crazy thing is, Ray, is we've got about 12 other cars on our Magic board, and we have about 25 on our long-term board. So we're planning 3 cars every year for the next 30 years of business.
You've got a long-term strategy drawn out there. But with such a long list there, what brought the NSC 6400s and the 6000s to the top? What was the big appeal for you to make that your first choice?
So the 6400 was a car that I need on my layout. So I model Welland, Ontario to Buffalo, New York, 2004 to present day. The common mainstay on that line, handling at the time, they were handling waste coming, construction waste coming out of New York and New Jersey, going to Northern Ontario, and then later they were doing scrap and other loads. Andrew, he predominantly models the CN Hagersville subdivision, which is from Brantford, Ontario, down to Nanakoke on Lake Erie, and they are used both when they decommission the Ontario Power Generation Plant and also when they do scrap material to formerly U.S. Steel, which is now Stelco Canada operations. So it hit 2 of our boxes. You know, I needed a fleet of about 60 per my layout. He needed a fleet of about 40. And National Steel being built just down the road from both of us, and both of us having exceptional connections at the operation, both with people on the floor and in engineering, it found the perfect fit.
Oh yeah, that definitely was a layup. 1, you needed them, and 2, you had all the, the connections and information to really start getting that project rolling.
Yeah.
So 6400, 6000s, I see you're offering a variety. You talked about the massive amount of SKUs that are available for these cars. What was the selection process as far as road names? What went into that? Like when you start building this car and you're starting to pick out road names, what were some of the things that led you to choose the ones you have?
An hour to 2 hours every day of watching virtual railfan cameras throughout the Northeast and parts of Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, seeing freight car patterns, seeing road name patterns, seeing destinations, you name it, finding out who the original origin was. In the summer, my wife and I took a family trip down to see her relatives in Kentucky, and on the way down, we went to the second largest landfill in the United States, called a place called Sunnyvale Farms in Fostoria, Ohio. And my wife that day took a bunch of discriminating photos of me trespassing to go and look at trash trains in the trailer park. She's going to share those discriminating photos against me when she needs to, increase the sales number, she told me. But
this sounds like a very bad Clark Griswold vacation kind of thing where, honey, where are we going? We're going to the largest landfill in Ohio. It sounds very much like that.
Well, it's funny. Our daughter Isabel's in the car, and she's just like, "Daddy, are you going to get out?" "Yes." "It stinks." "Give me 10 minutes, Isabel." Because I'm there doing paint samples. I'm there doing paint chips, getting some high-end resolution pictures for different decal placements. You name it. But it was two years plus of just watching train after train, going through car logs of owners, looking at secondhand log books. I had about 160 to 180 photos in my collection, and we have about 30 friends of ours in Southern Ontario and Northeastern United States that we pooled, so we can start to get a picture catalog together really quickly, A, of certain numbers and where their routings were, and B, if any of the cars had rebuilt, scrapped, or been repurposed. Because some of the cars had been reserviced because of the structural issues that the scraps clients had put the cars through. So a lot of research. Every single road number we've done has 3 photos to verify both sides, made sure it's appropriate, make sure all the artwork matches. A lot of time.
This was not just a wing it project, was it, Lorne? This was you put a lot of work and a lot of effort into it, and you shared with me some of the photos of the initial samples of the cars, and as much as the detail you've put into the research is the detail on these cars, and you've done an outstanding job, and I can't wait to get my hands on my pre-order that I put in, and it was definitely neat to see it, which was the Oak Ridge cars. Oak Ridge has a location right in Danbury, Connecticut, and I've seen those cars on a multitude of trains around here in the Connecticut area, including Eastern Connecticut. I've seen them go through, so it was really cool to see that. It's neat to see cars that, maybe a little unique, I guess. You don't see a ton of them. You don't see, everybody's seen a rail box go through on a train, and everybody sees, CSX, and they see all the other names. But when you see like a unique name like that, and for me, of course, Oak Ridge, and then my putting together the Oak Ridge boys, and then the Elvira starts to earworm me on that, and seeing that, and our good buddy Paul Cassar, by the way, didn't even know who the Oak Ridge boys are. So I guess the Oak Ridge boys weren't big in Australia, but certainly neat to see that car and have it, and then pops up as a production, availability. So I couldn't wait to put a pre-order in for it.
It's funny on that one, how I learned about the Oak Ridge boys. So in the advent of the internet age of music, and before it became pay for music, back in the old Napster and pre-days, my grandmother had given me a list of all these songs she wanted burned on a CD. Oak Ridge Boys and Elvira was probably one of the first 40 songs I remember downloading and burning on a CD for her. So I know that song quite well.
how it comes full circle to a rail car that says Oak Ridge, that brings that memory up. So that's pretty funny. So NSC 6400s. I know we mentioned Oak Ridge. The list of other road names available for it?
So there's Oak Ridge, there is CDX, which is a huge coastal distribution, is a huge waste company in the United States. They're predominantly the black with the white lettering. You've got Cardella, which I refer to as Oscar the Grouch dumpster green.
Yep.
Really cool car with the big Cardella. You've got AIM, which is predominantly scrap. You got CMBX, which is scrap. You've got Offix, which is scrap. You've got Offix being waste. You've got a couple other different versions of waste, and something unique. And now this is how different the OVR Trains brand is compared to my peers. We're also offering 2 data-only cars. So I'm extremely sensitive to electronic one-to-one peer review information. Especially, you can't beat getting information from different electronic sources. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with putting a survey out. So when we first had sampled these cars, I had asked the freelance Facebook groups and pages, is there any interest in a data-only car? Yeah. Oh, yeah, we'll make it. I don't think the manufacturer will do it. Oh, I know the manufacturer. We're good. And the next day when we announced it, I put out the data-only, and within about 2 days, we had about 140 data-only cars pre-sold.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
So you get the option of like data-only trash or data-only scrap, which is, perfect for a freelancer or somebody who wants to do a small little leaser. They can get a couple cars, do their own patch, all the same level of high-end detail that you expect from the main line, but now you can put your own short line or class 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like you said, freelancers, or if you've got something else that you've seen that isn't covered, but boy, there's a lot of it covered here. And so you're offering the cars, they're individual, and you're also offering them in a 6-pack.
Yes, and the reason why we did that, years ago, one of my friends in the industry, Craig Martin, formerly from BLMA, he did the similar strategy when he did his freight cars. He would offer them in 6, 12s, or 24s. So you'll notice some of the cars have up to 12 numbers, and some of the cars have up to 18 road numbers. Some of the smaller road names only have 6 because some of them only had anywhere between 20 to 40 cars. But like CDX, they had a roster of almost 400 cars. So when you get some of these bigger players, obviously you want to give the modeler the ability to stretch out their train length. And there's no sense of not having a prototypical trash train going through a layout. I've already had about 4 different club layouts pre-order the entire trash train because they want to model all the consolidated trash coming out of the Northeast going down into the Midwest of Ohio or down into Fostoria. So they want to simulate all the variety of cars. So by giving the options to the modelers of having multiple road number varieties, not a single or a 2-pack or 3-pack or a 4-pack, A, they get to represent the more prototypical train, and B, it lets them spice up the variety where they can get different numbers that are assigned to different trains. So we researched every car number to see where the cars were pooled and which operations or which states they supported. So it's a wide variety. I don't think I'm the number one source for trash in the United States, but I know enough by scanning it day in and day out for over 3 years.
Did you ever think when you were in your teens that you not only would your little project start this, but then you'd become the resident expert in trash trains?
In my teens, I actually thought I was going to grow up and be a CPA and work from one of the big threes because of growing up in the automotive banana belt of Ontario. Either you were big into automotive or you were big into agriculture. I mean, my granddad growing tobacco, which was a huge staple in Ontario, and my father working at a big three. That's kind of thought where I was going to be, Ray, was one of those two industries.
Sure. This is a lot more fun, though, isn't it?
Every day, getting feedback from customers or, hey, Lorne, there's a new paint scheme coming off the assembly line at National Steel. Like, there was a paint scheme 2 months ago. It's called JAM.
Yes.
That's the road name, JAMX. Yep. Or as us Canadians call it, we call it the Jam Trash. And that's one of the paint schemes that's likely going to be on our second run because we've got every picture of everyone coming off the assembly line.
Amazing. Great to have that access and the connections and the people that you've met along the way that lead you to being able to do these kinds of projects.
When the product comes out, both Andrew and myself are planning on also putting it on our newsletter, on our Facebook, and our live stream. But definitely giving a shout out to all the people who have supported us, whether it's part of our project video group team, whether it's that friend who I conned them to go out in the middle of the rain or a snow event just to get me reporting markings. Sometimes when I had to make a call because I needed a last piece of information, I was able to, pick up a phone and call a friend, and, within 12 hours, my email or Facebook had like 40 photos to, keep the project moving, and that's huge. And I know a lot of guys are going to say, well, the first 3 offerings are modern. The next 3 offerings we're looking at are going to be 60s to 80s, which is the era that I constantly hear online of unsupported, all these gaps. Well, a lot of that equipment carried into the 90s. Right.
So as we're recording this, we're heading into, obviously, we're staring down the holiday season. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, what are some of the things that should be on a modeler's holiday wish list this season?
First, number 1 is a DCC system. Whether it's a new modeler coming into the hobby or a modeler who's moving from DC to DCC or currently has DCC and wants to expand his pike or his layout, number one is, either getting him in the NC Power Cab or Digitrax Zephyr. Number 2, getting enough power so they can have that ability to expand and have people over or grandchildren. One of the biggest things I always strive is it doesn't matter what your layout looks like. The quicker you can run trains, the quicker everybody in your house, whether it's your significant other or little ones in your family, can have enjoyment. And that was the biggest thing when I was building my layout, and I currently am, was my wife said, you got to have the layout run by Isabel's birthday. Relatives are coming over. She'll be excited. It's a big step. And definitely, I believe that the DCC being number one. I mean, I always refer to sound locomotives as the crack cocaine. Once you hear it, you're addicted and you're hooked.
Going back to your point about running trains, that's absolutely correct when it comes to doing any layout, is that motivation to keep going. If you just kept going and going and have a single train run on your layout, you don't get that that satisfaction or that instinct, that gratification. And you got to do that. That helps you keep moving along for sure.
Running trains is the best deterrent to keep you moving. It is also the best deterrent to not give you, I would say, one of the biggest downfalls in the hobby is people have anxiety or get depressed that their trains aren't working or not operational, and then they all of a sudden lose interest and they pull out or pull back. But the quicker you can run and you can get that enjoyment or that ability that, you know what, you've had a bad work day, I'm going to go downstairs, I'm going to run trains for half an hour. I don't care. They go around in a circle. It makes me feel a little bit better about the day. It's a pick-me-up. You know, sometimes it also can be an enjoyment for people coming over to see what you're working on. No one wants to see a train that's got a hole to nowhere that falls off the side of the benchwork and it goes back and forth. One of the things I've always said is you start with something basic, whether it's a new modder. The ability to have a simple tabletop is so important just to get that, you know, enjoyment and that excitement, and then you build from there.
Absolutely. So what else do you expect to be hot this season?
Obviously, electronics being the way it's been, keeping modelers well stocked with sound decoders, programmers, especially if you're doing your own custom sound with the ESU application. Some of the main products, whether you're talking decoders. Obviously, the next one is the big ticket eye candy. So a past model that you missed out on, whether, let's say, it was an SD70 ACU or a previous Bowser run or a new Atlas, or some of the beautiful offerings from Broadway. I mean, obviously, locomotive is a higher ticket item, so depending where your budget is for your Christmas, sometimes that might be on the table or might not. Some of the other items that are generally on the table, puzzles, Christmas puzzles, train puzzles. It's a very low cost-effective item, but it gives you some enjoyment. In years past, I used to sell railroad art, so Jim and Allison Stoddart's in years past used to do railroad art, which was like wood cutout logos, kind of like man cave pieces. They were always big, both around Christmas and Father's Day time. They're not so much this year because both Jim and Allison have relocated and they're on a hiatus. Hardcover books has definitely, I've seen that being picked back up, especially during the pandemic and both the two previous Christmas holidays. A staple for us, one of the most popular items in our stocking stuffer for modelers is the Canadian Trackside Guide. And that's an annual book publication that comes out that covers Canadian railroads and short lines and Class 1 rosters. A lot of guys will have that ordered and go in their stocking, or it's a small item. I mean, it's that mid $20 item, so it's a good stocking or a smaller Christmas gift. Walter kits generally are very common. And the other one that seems to be very common with modelers is specific freight cars. And what I mean by that is a spouse will come in, or a family member will come in and said, you know, Dad's working on this scene, but Dad needs some cars. Finding that right match for prototypical or appropriate cars for his industry. It helps really to add the scene and complete the environment. Gift cards are very popular, whether it's in the digital or paper format. And then obviously, you know, I'm kind of a homer, but placing a pre-order for some of our unique product is always in demand. I know whether it's our custom runs or in this situation, having pre-orders lined up, and your significant other says, well, I'll pay the pre-order deposit, or I'll cover your pre-orders for when they arrive in February or March of next year for some of our unique product. Obviously, some other unique products that go well Christmas season, the buses. There's a really good selection of buses in 187, both from Rapido, awesome die-casts and iconic replicas. Trucks are a really cool item to have in a stocking. And honestly, it comes down to what the customer likes. I've noticed in years, Thomas the Train has waned. Could just be the demographic that we're in. But I know in previous years, my mom would always do well with Thomas. I don't do that well anymore with Thomas. I think it's more or less the price sensitivity of the parents. Yeah. It is a challenging hobby if you have limited funds for a child for a Christmas gift. It's one of those hobbies where when I started, I got trains from my parents, my grandparents, and my aunt and uncle, and they all basically pooled money together to get enough to start that 4x8. Right. So that Christmas morning, I had a 4x8 tabletop with 2 locomotives, an MRC power pack, and 6 model die-cast roundhouse Atherton freight cars. But that was 6 relatives pooling their money.
You're right.
For me.
Yeah. There's some tough costs of entry into the hobby for sure. I'll tell you though, one thing you did bring up, and one thing I try to preach to anybody who's trying to get their kid into it, and they ask me, and it's like, please don't go out and buy a very inexpensive kit. Get yourself a fairly decent one, because as you mentioned, if people, especially kids, they set this thing up and it doesn't run or it doesn't perform well, it's just frustrating, and then they walk away from the hobby. And you want to make sure that something that you get is well represented in good quality to keep them engaged.
Yeah, especially if you're looking for like a set wise. Obviously, Bachman has a great line of different entry level sets. I love the Cato from the HO and N scale point of view. Extremely durable, great product. Can be put away. I think if you're starting a train layout with a child under, say, the age of 10 or 12, and space might be a restriction, especially if you're in a larger urban market or your housing is smalling, the ability to put away.
Right. Or
design your tabletop that the benchwork can either have fold away legs and slide under. I think that's really important. I remember what I really wanted. I wanted a lifelike train set. And I remember the first thing my dad said to my grandparents was, we're going to build a table because that lifelike train set is nothing but a piece of junk.
Right. And
let's be honest, right at the time, those things didn't really have a good shelf life, did they, in the 90s?
No.
I mean, they were $60 to $80 sets that, a child would get 4 or 5 hours enjoyment, but generally would fail out.
Right. Imagine how many kids walked away from the hobby from a poor set. Yeah, you want to bring your kid in with something decent. Doesn't have to be most expensive. Get yourself something that's fairly decent, that's going to run, that's going to give them hours of enjoyment, be reliable, and then something that they can build upon.
I think the simple answer is I'm looking for something that is quality entry level. And if they decide that they want to do more, we can. That's the best question you can possibly ask when you're walking into a model train shop. I know I need to spend some. Show me what my options are, and show me where my lower budget is and my upper budget. And that's the first question I always ask is, what is your baseline budgetary expectations?
Yeah, and if you're walking into a hobby shop that isn't asking those questions, you're in the wrong place for sure. So
without a doubt.
So when these folks are ready to get their holiday shopping underway or just looking to purchase, tell us where we need to go.
So you can shop online at our website at www.ovrtrains.com, or you can give us a call toll free at 1-877-885-7245. We ship Monday to Friday every day. One of our main goals at our shop is to have every order by 2 o'clock shipped out by 3 o'clock that day. That's one of our big pride is the speed of service, especially when it comes to the holiday season. The happier the customer is, the quicker the parcel received. However, we make sure that we pack efficiently, we ship efficiently, and it's packed well. We have one of the best return rates in the industry, and I would say for every 1,000 parcels, we have maybe 1 to 1.5 parcels of damage. So we try to, do as best as we can because, it's a prideful thing when you get that order in the mail or your first order, but you want to have enjoyment. You don't want to be disappointed.
And I live in the United States. No issue getting stuff to me, right?
So we ship United States daily. Generally, it's about a 4 or 5 day through the border. Just depends the volume at either the Niagara Falls or at the Detroit or Sarnia border crossing, getting it through customs. But once it gets through the system, it's all tracked. Generally, Western New York, Northeast, we can have in 5 days.
That's good things come to those who wait, and definitely some great stuff coming out of Otter Valley. And Lorne, I appreciate you being on the show and getting us up to speed. And like I said, I look forward to seeing you in Springfield with some samples in hand and getting to see what you're up to next.
And absolutely, I encourage everybody at Springfield to come up and meet myself and my team. Definitely give us feedback. And definitely, if you're thinking about a model down the road, we definitely would love the input. We are open for business and open consideration for pretty much everything. The one main caveat with our line is it has to have a Canadian connection. And what I mean by that is A, owned by one of the Canadian Class 1s, B, possibly built by one of the Canadian builders, whether it's National Steel or Hawker Siddeley or Trenton Works or the other, or C, the car moves through Canada. So obviously I'm not going to make something that's for a Pacific U.S. road that never leaves that road. But I mean, those are pretty easy check marks or bars to hurdle over, Ray. I don't think those are unrealistic ones because I want to bring a product out for my Canadian customers. At the same time, I want to bring new opportunities both for my U.S. customers and my international customers as well.
Well, I think you would hit on just those criteria about 80%, I would think, or more. That's just me, kind of guessing. So it sounds like you're going to have a lot of it covered, and I look forward to seeing more of it up in Springfield. John Sacerdoti has promised us good weather this time, so we're gonna try to hold him to it.
We planned for an extra day before, an extra day after, so we're not going back to Canada that night. We made sure of it.
That's for sure. All right, again, thanks, Lorne, for being on Around the Layout.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. You'll find more about today's show on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Around the Layout. Learn more about the show and check out past and future episodes on our website, aroundthelayout.com. And send us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks again for hanging out with us around the layout.